My name is Emily Carter, and 6 weeks before my wedding, my parents returned my invitation like it was a bill they refused to pay. If someone had told me that morning my own family would choose my younger sister over me again, I would have laughed. I'd spent 18 months planning my wedding with my fiancé, Ryan. We lived in Seattle, Washington, worked full-time, skipped vacations, and saved every extra dollar. My parents had insisted on paying for the venue as their gift, proudly telling everyone they had reserved the beautiful lakeside ballroom for nearly $50,000. I believed it was their way of showing they were finally proud of me. I couldn't have been more wrong. My mother called that afternoon and said, "Come over. We need to talk about the wedding." Her voice sounded unusually cold, but I convinced myself she was stressed. The moment I walked into my parents' living room, I felt something was off. My wedding invitation sat unopened on the coffee table. My father never smiled. Chloe, my younger sister, leaned back on the couch with a grin she wasn't even trying to hide. Before I could ask what was happening, Dad pushed the invitation toward me. "Take it back," he said. I frowned. "What do you mean?" My mother folded her arms. "We're not attending your wedding, Emily." My heart stopped. "Why?" Chloe laughed under her breath before Mom answered. "Because we're not. Paying for a selfish daughter's wedding." I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. Selfish? I'd spent years helping this family whenever they needed me. Then Dad opened a folder and slid a contract across the table. The Lakeside Ballroom logo stared back at me. "We transferred our reservation," he said calmly. "Your sister deserves it more." My hands started shaking. "You gave my wedding venue to Chloe?" She smiled without an ounce of guilt. "Mine will actually be worth celebrating." The room fell silent. A few relatives looked away, pretending they hadn't heard a thing. Nobody defended me. Nobody even asked if I was okay. My mother looked me straight in the eyes and quietly said, "You'll get over it. You don't have anywhere else to go." In that moment, something inside me broke. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply took out my phone, dialed one number I hadn't called in years, whispered, "I think it's finally time," and walked out before anyone could stop me. The rain hadn't stopped by the time I reached my car, but I barely noticed. My hands were trembling so badly. I dropped my keys twice before I managed to unlock the door. Ryan answered my call before I could even speak. The moment he heard me crying, he said, "Stay where you are. I'm coming." 20 minutes later, he pulled into the parking lot, wrapped me in his arms, and waited until I could finally explain everything. I expected anger, maybe panic, but he simply listened. When I finished, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Emily, they didn't cancel our wedding. They only showed us who they really are." Those words hurt because they were true. That evening, my parents sent a message to every relative claiming I demanded a bigger wedding, insulted Chloe, and refused to appreciate their generosity. Within hours, my phone filled with texts calling me ungrateful, dramatic, and selfish. Only my Aunt Linda reached out. She didn't ask whether the rumors were true. She simply asked, "Are you okay?" I broke down the second I heard her voice. The next morning, Ryan and I visited the ballroom, hoping there had been some mistake. There wasn't. The manager quietly confirmed that my parents had transferred the entire reservation into Chloe's, named 3 days earlier. Even he looked uncomfortable handing me the paperwork. Walking back to the car, Ryan squeezed my hand and smiled. "We'll find another place." I wanted to believe him. But every venue we called was either fully booked or far beyond our budget. By sunset, it felt like my dream wedding had disappeared. Then my phone vibrated. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Chloe. It was a reply to the call I'd made before leaving my parents' house. The message was short. "I'll be there. It's time you knew the truth. Until then, trust me." I read those words 3 times before locking my phone. Ryan noticed the change on my face and quietly asked, "Who was that?" I looked toward the dark highway, took a slow breath, and whispered, "Someone my parents prayed would never find me." The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life, but they also taught me who truly belonged in it. Ryan refused to let me give up, and Aunt Linda quietly helped us search for another venue. We eventually found a small waterfront chapel outside Seattle. It wasn't the grand ballroom I dreamed of, but every dollar we spent came from people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. We mailed new invitations and expected half the family to ignore them. Instead, almost everyone accepted. Later, I discovered why. My mother had been telling relatives our wedding would fall apart before the ceremony and that they should come just to see the disaster. They weren't coming to celebrate us. They were coming to watch us fail. On the morning of the wedding, I looked out from the bridal suite and recognized familiar faces filling the seats. My parents walked in first, dressed as if they were attending an awards show. Chloe followed, wearing a white designer dress that looked far too close to a bridal gown. She smiled when she saw our simple decorations and whispered loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "This place is adorable. If you're getting married on a budget." A few people laughed. I felt the sting, but I didn't react. Ryan reached for my hand and quietly asked if I wanted them removed. I shook my head. Not yet. He looked confused but trusted me anyway. As the ceremony time approached, I checked my phone again. No new message. For the first time, doubt crept into my mind. Had I believed a promise that would never be kept? My father caught me looking toward the entrance and smirked. "Still hoping someone will save you?" he asked. I met his eyes and answered with the smallest smile. "No, I'm just waiting for someone to arrive." He laughed and turned away. 10 minutes later, just as the music was about to begin, every conversation outside suddenly stopped. Through the chapel window, I saw a long black SUV slowly pull into the parking lot. One by one, guests stood and turned toward the entrance. My heart started pounding. I recognized that vehicle immediately. After all these years, they had actually come. The driver stepped out first and opened the rear door without saying a word. Every eye in the chapel followed the man who slowly climbed out. He looked to be in his late 50s, dressed in a simple navy suit, holding an old leather folder tightly against his chest. I had only seen his face in a few faded photographs hidden in my grandmother's attic years ago, yet I recognized him instantly. My mother froze. The color drained from her face so quickly that even Chloe stopped smiling. My father took one uneasy step backward. The man ignored everyone else and walked straight toward me. When he stopped, his eyes filled with tears. "Emily?" he asked softly. I nodded before I could stop myself. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he handed me the worn folder. Inside were birthday cards, unopened letters, photographs, and small gifts, each carefully dated from the time. I was 6 years old until just a few months earlier. Every envelope had been returned with the same handwriting across the front. "Return to sender. Do not contact her again." My hands began to shake as I recognized my mother's signature. The man looked at me with heartbreaking regret. "I never abandoned you," he said quietly. "I came back every year. I wrote, I called. I even came to your school once, but I was told you hated me and never wanted to see me." Tears blurred my vision as I turned another page. Every letter ended the same way. "I'll keep trying because you'll always be my daughter." The chapel had become completely silent. Guests stared at my parents, waiting for someone to deny it. No one did. My mother lowered her head while my father couldn't meet my eyes. The man took a slow breath and whispered, "There's one more thing you deserve to know." He turned toward the guests before looking back at me. "Your grandmother asked me to wait until your wedding day if I ever found you," he said. "She believed you'd be strong enough to hear the truth then. My grandmother had passed away 5 years earlier, and I'd never understood why she always told me to judge people by their actions instead of their words. Now I did." The man opened another section of the folder and removed copies of court records, certified letters, and visitation orders. Every document showed the same thing. He had fought for years to stay in my life, but every letter, birthday gift, and request to see me had been blocked before I ever knew they existed. My mother finally broke the silence. "Emily, I can explain." I slowly looked at her. "Can you explain 22 years? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Chloe stared at the floor, suddenly unable to meet anyone's eyes. My father tried to speak, yet even he seemed ashamed of what he'd allowed to happen. Around us, relatives who had believed their stories began shaking their heads in disbelief. Aunt Linda quietly walked over and hugged me while tears rolled down her cheeks. My father whispered, "We made mistakes." I took a deep breath. "No," I answered. "A mistake happens once. You made the same choice every single year." The chapel remained completely silent. I reached for Ryan's hand, then looked at the man standing beside me. "Would you walk me down the aisle?" His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. Together we walked toward the front while every guest stood to their feet. No one looked at my parents anymore. The ceremony wasn't remembered because of the flowers or the decorations. It was remembered because the truth finally arrived. After we exchanged our vows, my mother tried to stop me outside the chapel. She whispered, "Please don't leave us like this." I smiled sadly and gave her the only answer. I had left. I didn't lose my parents today. I lost them years ago. Today, I finally found the family that never stopped looking for me. Then I took my husband's hand, walked toward my future with my father beside us, and never looked back.